Hey, hi everybody. This is Dr. Carol Francis. I just wanted to touch base with you today. I had a wonderful interview with Dr. Bernie Siegel, and some of you may know Dr. Bernie Siegel from decades ago, like in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and he just continues to publish into the 90s and 2000s. And he's a profound medical professional who discovered that of all the things that heal, it's love. And that love is the healer, it's the medicine, laughter and love. He discovered this, published it, reached out to the medical community and said love's everything. And so I had him on my podcast, and I'll put the link down below, where to have him talk about child abuse and how to recover from it. And he talked about self-love. He said if you didn't experience love as a child, you're going to have to figure out how to do this love for yourself now. He gave lots of examples as to what it would be like to be in a loving family and what it would be like to be mirrored by a loving family. And why is that helpful? Because it gives you a sense that if you did not have love because you were abused radically as a child, or even mildly or chronically in whatever way, that you have got to kind of redevelop your capacity to understand what it even means to love yourself, what that would look like. So I wanted to elaborate on the podcast in two different ways. First, I'd like to change this word self-love to self-respect, because sometimes love is very confused with feeling like you have to have these profound and deep emotional experiences about yourself or someone else. And clearly, we don't seem to have as much confusion about what respect means. And self-respect means I'm not going to step into a situation where someone's going to harm me. I'm not going to continue a situation once I know that it's harmful. I'm going to exit as fast as I can. I am going to not do things that make me feel bad about myself in terms of respecting others. I'm not going to feel illegitimately guilty when really guilt isn't something that I've earned. I'm not going to blame others unjustifiably, and I'm going to avoid letting people blame me unjustifiably, so that I go into that blame pain game, which I talk about on another video. So those are all signs of respect. You respect yourself by what you eat, by how you sleep, by what you do with your body, by the job and the way you earn money for yourself, the way you take care of your everyday needs. Self-respect is how you connect other individuals who are also really capable of respecting themselves and definitely respecting other people. So this experience of self-respect is probably clearer than self-love, because self-love has that sense of this, are we unconditional with ourselves? That's confusing. Or do we have to feel this mushy kind of, oh, I love myself so much? I mean, we can. That's confusing. And not as clear to teach when you're recovering from child abuse where you did not learn self-love. Also, self-love is nowadays confused very much with the me generation and narcissism and extreme entitlement to everything. And, oh, I love myself because I'm only going to do those things that I want to do, as opposed to self-centered, or it's too feely touchy. Ooh, I like feely touchy. Don't get me wrong. However, feely touchy can often mislead us. In fact, one of the reasons people get involved in abusive relationships is because of that wonderful feely touchy experience that can happen within the first 3 to 4 months. But it is also the way con artists, narcissists, and people who want to lure you into an abusive relationship so they can use you, they'll trap you with that mushy good feeling. So mushy good feelings are great, but they can also be a trap. It's the self-respect that's most important. So I was going to say that to those of you that are recovering from abuse, try to understand and practice every day, every moment of the day. Am I respecting myself in this moment? And am I interacting with people who are respectful as well? And then what do I do with those situations with those people that are not respectful? That's where you want to work on your clarity, because obviously, having been abused as a child, it gets really murky and unclear. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about forgiveness, because forgiveness, in our discussion that I had with Bernie Siegel on the podcast, again, a great podcast, very inspirational. He is such a man of genuine heart. we talk about forgiveness, and he and I have gone on dialogue on email after the show, just talking about what forgiveness means. And I really am of the belief that forgiving the person who abused you is actually the wrong word. Releasing yourself from the bond and lure and cords and traps of the person that abused you or the abusive situation is the goal. Release yourself. And some people have said you release the other person by forgiving them. And I just don't think that's right. Let me tell you why. Forgiveness has this connotation that it is something that you give the abuser. And when you're healing, you actually are not focusing on what you give the abuser. Some people get very trapped in the feeling of, I should forgive the abuser, which means letting him off the hook. That means like forgiving that he or she ever did anything wrong. And that's just not clear thinking. Okay. Some people will say, well, then it's not that you forgive them, but you don't forget. You're not saying that what they did was right. You're just forgiving them. And I still think that that's just the wrong term. And another reason I want to change this term is because con artists and narcissists and abusers will lure their victims, sociopathic individuals will lure their victims over and over into a cycle of abuse by saying, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Let's start over. And that phrase is such a common phrase. You would think they all had it programmed inside of them because they say it all the time. And so the abused individual, wanting things to be good, wanting to believe in another individual healing and changing, wanting to believe this time we'll get it together. Oh, it's probably my fault anyway, so of course, let's work on it some more. Wanting to believe the very best of the situation, be optimistic, or feeling love, or feeling like they want to be a good person and forgive, gets right trapped back into that abusive situation. So when you have con artists, narcissistic lovers, or you have sociopathic individuals, or you have chronic abusers saying, please forgive me, then the very last thing that a person wants to think when they're recovering from abuse is, I'm going to forgive them, because what that has meant in the past is I'm going to forgive them and go back, and forgive them and go back, and forgive them and expect that my forgiveness changes them. And that's another thing that keeps people in an abusive situation trapped, is they believe that their healing is totally limited by whether or not the abuser gets better. And your healing, your recovery has nothing to do with whether the abuser heals or not, or gets better, or repents, or asks for forgiveness, or even admits that they're wrong. It just isn't even relevant. Your recovery is about you. And if you're feeling guilty, maybe the forgiveness is about forgiving yourself for stepping into a situation that you were naive about, or stepping into it over and over again and not being naive, or stepping into a situation and participating in the abuse by being mutually abusive, which is very common. That is about you working on forgiving you for your recovery, for your healing, but not forgiving the other individual in hopes that they'll change or heal, that you believe that your love and your forgiveness will heal or change them, because that's not going to happen with individuals who are chronic abusers, narcissistic lovers, con artists, and sociopathic individuals, because they don't get better. They're entrenched in being an abuser, and they will either continue to abuse you from afar or up close, or they'll go on to someone else. But you, please recover you. And so that's why this whole discussion about learning self-respect as another way of thinking about self-love, and maybe in part being able to work through your own self-forgiveness. That's what's relevant here. If your abuser heals and comes back to you and says, I truly am sorry, I don't want you to come back in this relationship. It's really bad for you. I'm not the healthiest person for you, but I love you. I care about you. I'm so, so sorry that this ever happened. Here, I'd like to make recompense, or I'd like to make it up to you, but not be a part of a relationship, because I will not lure you back into a potentially abusive situation, because I respect you. But I do want to let you know that I know I'm wrong, and you may or may not forgive me, but I do know that I'm wrong, and I'm going to get the help I need. And I just want to admit that. And it's wonderful when an abuser says that, because there is something that just cosmically comes together like, they're admitting it. And that feels wonderful. But you will not necessarily get that admission by forgiving them. They have to shift into a position where they're ready to be forgiven. And your work is to heal so that if they did shift, maybe you'd be ready to forgive them. But forgiveness is not something you give to someone who's not wanting forgiveness. It's just you being ready, because you're healed. And that, by the way, is down the road on the paths of recovery. Well, I'm Dr. Carol Francis, and this is a part of the series of Paths to Recovery After Abuse and Trauma. Paths to Recovery After Abuse and Trauma. And there'll be a lot of different videos. There already are, both on Facebook and here. And I'm really glad you joined me in thinking about this. You can reach me at drcarolfrancis.com or 310-543-1824. Love to talk to you. Love to help you. And I really hope you have that respect for yourself so you continue to help yourself. All right. Bye. Glasses on so I can turn this off. Till later.